My theory right now is I believe that Sasquatch runs mainly on all fours. I think the spider crawl theory that people reported in, I think that's more of a natural movement for them versus an upright. You take, for example, 90% of encounters that you hear about, not everybody's encounter, mind you, but about 90% always starts off with the one saying, "It stood up." My name is Matthew Orton. I'm the host of the Drunken Cryptids Podcast. I'm originally from Utah. I've been living in Arkansas since 2004 when I got out of the military. And my interest into, before Bigfoot began when I was a child, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a household that believed into the paranormal and into cryptids. So I was raised with the knowledge of Bigfoot. We lived on the Wasatch Front outside of Ogden, Utah. So everybody in the neighborhood knew, everybody talked about, Bigfoot was always a conversation starter. But my real journey began when I was in kindergarten. My mom and stepdad were getting ready to be married. And my step-grandfather was generous to let them move into his mother's house after she had passed away, which turned out to be extremely haunted. It wasn't a friendly entity or entities at all. We would have vases moving across the counter. You could visibly watch them move. The old school faucets, cold and hot. You would see the one turn off and the other turn on while you're standing there watching. Doors would open and close. We heard a baby crying one afternoon, me and my mother did. The big event was my little sister was sleeping. We were watching a show about the Amazon River. I remember that because it was the Amazon River. Asked for chocolate milk, and my parents said, "Yeah, go ahead, go." And on my way to the kitchen, my little sister's bedroom light was turning on and on, flashing. And when the light would come on, her pillow was above her head, and I could see it just dropping repeatedly on her. Of course, I'm like 5 or 6, and pretty much like, that's not my show. And, walked and made my Nesquik, the old school powder, and I walked back by, and the pillow was still doing it. And my parents had their back turned, they had the living room set up so they couldn't see the light flashing. And as soon as I sat down, she started screaming. And they jumped up, they ran into the room. They yelled for me because she was saying, "Matthew was hitting me with my pillow." So they called me in there, her pillow's on the floor, and they're yelling at me. I'm crying, "It wasn't me, it wasn't me." And that's when the lights were turning off and on, the old school push button lights. So you actually physically hear it click. And my dad would turn around and click, turn around, click, click, click. My mother had an entity walk up on her while she was laying in bed, thought it was my stepdad. Disappeared as soon as he walked into the house. Like I said, doors opening, closing, just not a friendly. We had the Mormon church came in and blessed it. And we had to walk around a block, me and my sister and my mother did. And church came, blessed it. It got worse. The Catholic Church came in and blessed it, and we moved a week later. And it was a really old property. It's where the basement was a dirt floor basement. There was a coal chute from back when they would have the coal wagons come down and they would shovel coal down to warm the property up, the house up. So, but as a kid, you could not pay me to go into the basement at all. So even after we had moved, I had nightmares about the house, about something in the house, and which a kid should not be having. That kind of sparked my interest into cryptids and paranormal, Bigfoot. In Utah being Bigfoot, even in elementary, whatever books there were about ghosts in Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, vampires, I was that kid reading. And I was really lucky my parents supported this. I mean, here's their son coming home with, 8 years old reading books on Bigfoot. We had encyclopedias, and I would read out of the encyclopedia what I could about everything. I was fascinated with this field because of what happened. I had a shadow person encounter as a child at my grandmother's house. Just kept feeding my desire to figure out what was happening in the field out there. And my first Bigfoot encounter didn't really happen until I was in the service in my mid-20s in 2002. So that was, yeah, and that's the big story, the aha story that everybody wants to hear. 2002, I'm going to keep everybody's names changed. I'm not going to mention the unit that I was assigned to. I refer to it as National Lampoon's version of we're in the Army now. So they were doing a gunnery. It was August of 2002, whether it was the 1st or the 15th. I can't remember which date, but it was payday. That's how I know it was either the 1st or the 15th. I was assigned to the NCOIC of an ammunition holding area, AHA. That's what we call it, AHA. So the abbreviation is, the military, we do that all the time. And you would pull 24 hours on, 24 hours off, do your normal duties, and then you go back. So it was a rotating guard shift. And it was really easy. You go to the guard, you go out in the middle of nowhere, you're watching this bunch of ammunition for 24 hours, just kind of twiddling your thumbs. So it was my second rotation there. We, the NCOI relieved, Sergeant M, that morning when I pulled up in my truck, he looked exhausted. He was tired. He had bags under his eyes. It just looked, I even asked him, I was like, did you guys not sleep last night? And he's like, no, we had a whole bunch of coyotes coming in. I was like, really? Now that's not unheard of though. So out in the field for us training and everything in the military, soldiers are pretty dirty. They leave trash behind and food behind, stuff like that. So it's a free meal for the coyotes. I've actually physically watched a coyote grab a guy's boot outside of his sleeping bag and run off with it. And of course, we all laughed at him. He didn't find it funny. We all did. We got the boot back, but it'd been chewed up. So they're not afraid of us. So they're not worried about coming in. They know we're not going to really harm them. It's a free meal. So for Sergeant M to say coyotes, I was like, okay, we've been here long enough. They know that we're here. There's obviously no big deal. The 2 soldiers I had assigned to me that day were from another platoon. Had never really worked with them. They've never really worked with me. They just happened to draw the short stick for duty that weekend. So we set up and they heard, Sergeant M talk about coyotes. And the most dangerous creature in the world is a bored infantry soldier in the field. They are the most creative. They come up with collective. So from here out, I refer to them as Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett. Why? They're trying to make bows and arrows. They're they're bored, and I get that. Me, I'm reading a book, I'm happy. We had MREs to eat. Now, for a normal guard site though, we have a radio, we can radio when there's an issue. And normally you have a weapon assigned to you with about 5 rounds of live ammunition for protection. You got assigned for everything. We had none of that, which is why I refer to this as National Lampoon's running, the military. So it was payday. I didn't want to eat an MRE. I can't leave the site. I said, hey, who wants to drive down the main post, go to Burger King, get some Whoppers? We can have Whoppers. I'll buy us Whoppers. And the one kid goes, I'll go do it, Sergeant. So I gave him $20. He went down post, came back, a little over an hour, because it was a long drive where we were at. And he came back with $20 worth of Whoppers. Now, in 02, that's a lot of Whoppers. So, and I looked at him, I was like, really? And he's like, well, Sergeant. I was like, okay, so now we have a bunch of Whoppers. So we eat our full, and Daniel Boone and David Crockett, they're like, hey, Sergeant, can we go make traps for the coyotes? Now, I knew they weren't gonna make a well enough trap for the coyotes. And I was like, go ahead, this will be great. So they take a handful of Whoppers, 3 of them, and they go and set these traps outside of our ammunition where we're set up at. So where we're set up at, we were off about 400 meters off of the main, we call it a hardball road, a paved road or a concrete road, we call that a hardball road in the military. Dirt roads, we call those tank trails for tread, vehicles, because the treads on them will tear up the asphalt and the concrete. So there's generally in the field areas on a hardball, there'll be a tank trail parallel to that. So the wheeled vehicles will be on the hardball and then the tracks will be on the tank trail. We were on a tank trail that took off of the hardball, and we were just up in the middle of nowhere. Behind us was a really good thick wood line. In front of us was an open area. We had a clear cut in the woods in front of us where they had put in either a gas line or power lines running through. So I call it like an alley. You've seen them before. The wood line is like a perfect clear alley. And that was probably a little bit to the right of how we set up. The ammunition was probably about maybe 25 meters from the little camel net we were set up with. And beside us, we had a dirt berm, a mound that ran parallel, and it sloped down where we were at, and went up to about 6 feet, and then sloped down on the other side, and that probably ran for about maybe 30 meters. And on our side of it was a good thicket, a Texas thicket. So that's how we were set up. So that's a little visual. So Daniel Boone, David Crockett, they established their whopper traps. They're all excited. And soldiers talk about various things throughout the day. And these two guys knew each other from, their units, they're talking. I'm just reading my book. I'm happy as can be. It's hot, miserable. And like everything else, when the sun went down, it's August, it's Texas, so the sun goes late, got dark, and they said, "Did you hear that?" And it was enough of their tone of them asking, "Did you hear?" They weren't asking me, they were asking each other, actually. "Did you hear that?" And I responded with, "Hear what?" And they said, "Well, Sergeant, it sounded like somebody dropped a half-filled canteen on the ground. And it makes it a really distinct thunk sound. It's really unique. It stands out. It's a really thunk, just kind of." And I was like, okay. So I paused for a moment, I was listening. And it sounded like a car went down the hardball, hit something, and it echoed. And I went, "Well, that's what you guys heard." And they were like, "No, Sergeant, that's not at all what we heard." I was like, "No, that's what you heard. You just mistook it. It's the echo that throws your sound off." No cryptid, no paranormal thoughts in my head whatsoever. I'm in NCO Sergeant mode. So, and that's when I was listening for a moment, where they heard the sound was at, there was no crickets, there was no noises, nothing at all. On the right now, it was all loud. Behind us was loud, but to the left, it was quiet. And if you've been out in the woods before and you get that part, all right, in my mind, there was somebody. I'm thinking somebody. There's another unit out here training, and they're thinking either we're the OP4 or we're the Blue 4. So I was listening for a minute. The crickets went up on the left. They get quiet on the right. And then it flip-flopped. For about an hour and a half, it would do this. So like whatever was out there was walking back and forth. And so I'm thinking it's another unit. They're training, and they don't know that we're there. Because we just have like a glow stick, a chem light, my little flashlight, that's all we have. So they're trying to figure out who we are. And then all of a sudden the noises came back up, everything went normal, and our Humvee from the range pulled in. So I set my glow stick down on top of my Pringles that I was snacking on to get up and go meet the Humvee. And they were turning in spent brass and picking up ammunition. And we had to sign for it and do paperwork for that part. So as they come in, I'm talking to the driver, what they doing, dropping off, how many more tracks you gotta go through gunnery, what we're looking at for the rest of the night. He's responding back with, I think we got a few tracks left, they have to qualify, we won't be back. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, so we'll pick it back up in the morning after these guys, so we're covered. But I still have to stay there, obviously. And I was like, okay, cool, so we're here for the rest of the night. And I looked over and realized that my chem light was gone. And I was like, okay, somebody went and picked it up. They're using it. And about 5 minutes later, one of my guards came over and goes, "Hey, Sergeant, can I get the chem light?" And I went, "You have the chem light." He's like, "No, Sergeant, we don't have it." So chem light's gone. I'm like, really? The driver hands me a box of chem lights. I'm like, thanks. They drive off. And I walk back over to the camo net, and I'm standing around looking, and I'm fully expecting to see my chem light somewhere bobbing off into the darkness. There's no moon. It's just starlight. So it's really dark out there, so it would not be hard to miss seeing this green glow stick bouncing around. And I was like, okay. And that's when it got quiet again. It got quiet again to the left. And I was like, all right. At this point in time, Daniel Boone and David Crockett have picked up, there's something happening. And I was like, you know what, guys? There's somebody out here. There's another unit training. That's what we're dealing with. Let's go ahead and mark the ammunition, let them know, hey, we're hands off, They're lost. They have to be lost. And again, I'm thinking there's another unit. So we take the chem lights, we walk up to the first picket for the concertina wire around the ammunition. I break it, shake it, mark it, walk along the concertina wire towards the hardball, get to that one, crack it, shake it, mark it. As I turn the corner, two things happen simultaneously. I step around the corner, I got my little pen light out. I step into a cold spot. It was so cold, I saw my breath through the flashlight. And immediately to my left, thunk. The half-filled canteen sound that the guys reported earlier, thunk. And I'm trying to step back into that cold spot as I'm looking to my left, okay, there's somebody here. There's really somebody here. Now I know there's somebody here. They're freaking out. They're right behind me. I mean, if they were any closer, we'd be wearing the same uniform, to be honest with you. So I'm like, okay, yeah, they're here. I even made the announcement, hey, we're not playing. Or something along those lines. Go up, mark the rest of the area, go back to the camo net, and I realized at this point in time, everything is quiet. The whole area surrounding us is completely quiet. The woods behind us are quiet, to the right's quiet, to the left is quiet, but you could hear in the distance out there in the insects outside of our perimeter. And I was like, okay, they're messing with us, we're gonna mess back with them. We're gonna move outside the camo net, we're gonna squat down, we're gonna perform a little sear, a little 360 degree, down low, between the ammunition and this thicket. And the guy's like, all right. So we step out, squat down, and I've got the thicket probably maybe 4 feet to my right, and the ammunition's probably a good maybe 15 meters to my left, not that far away. And we were no sooner squatted down for maybe 5 minutes when all of a sudden there's footsteps. Deliberate footstep, step, step. There's somebody walking straight towards me. So I'm trying to get lower and lower and lower to the ground to silhouette them against the skyline so I can see who this is or what's coming in. And by my mind, then I tell, it's at night, my adrenaline's pumping, and my estimation was it got about 4 feet from where I was squatted at. And I click on my flashlight. 2 things happen simultaneously. Again, there's always 2 things. 1, nothing was in front of me. 2, something bolted out of the thicket to my right, up over the berm. I jump up, sprint down. I'm in my mid-20s, so I'm in the best shape of my life. Sprint down, get on top of this 6-foot berm when this giant rock lands behind me. Boom, boom. I spin around, and there's Daniel Boone at the bottom of this berm. So in my mind, it's him. These guys are messing with me. Race down to the berm, I grab Boone, we're face to face, and I'm yelling at him, if this is you guys, I'm gonna bury you. I'm in classic sergeant mode, blah, 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 blah. So again, 2 things simultaneously happen. 1, I realize he's crying. Tears are streaming. He's not sobbing, but the tears are just flowing, streaming out of his eyes. And I'm realizing it's not him, it's not them. And behind me in the thick woods, this log goes, something big stepped on a log, crumbled it. I was like, oh, so I shoved off of him, and I'm in fired up, angry mode. Now this unit is messing with me and my guys. I'm done playing. I'm done playing. So over the berm I go, into the woods. And this is where it gets odd, if it isn't already. I get about maybe 10, 15 feet max into the woods. I got my little pen light on. It doesn't put off a lot of light, but it was dark. It was like this oppressive, just darkness just weighing on you. And like you really couldn't see that well. Now, I have 2 memories. I have a memory of me holding the flashlight looking, and then I have a memory of me looking at me from about which is odd, from about the 1 o'clock position where I can see me with my flashlight through the woods. So this is like a simultaneous memory, which is, again, odd. I don't understand this part. But I remember the feeling of just being beat up and just like devastated and just kind of crushed. And I had to leave. Everything was telling me to leave. So I slowly back out of the woods, get on the tank trail. I look over to my right, I see my pickup. And I'm like, I have you now. Go to my truck, I fire it up, I turn the headlights on, turn the brights on, light the whole area up. It's like the clouds parted, the sun was shining, angels are singing. I was like, And then the military training kicked in. We gotta maintain noise and light discipline. And I was like, can't do it. So I turned off my truck, turned off the lights, and it was 2002, the year before a movie had came out, and everybody was all excited about this movie. It was an exciting movie about cars and racing, and they made 18 other versions of it since, and Fast and Furious. everybody was putting neons on there. And I tell you what, every law enforcement agency in 2002 should have thanked the producers of Fast and Furious for making them money, because everybody put neons on and they were illegal and everybody was getting tickets. I got pulled over twice, once on post and once off a post for it. So I finally put a switch on there. So like, all right. So I turned my blue neons on, walked over to the camo net where Daniel Boone and David Crocker are at, and they're literally actually hugging each other, and they're begging to leave the site. Sorry, we gotta leave, we gotta leave, we gotta leave. So it turned into an argument of them leaving or not, and me arguing with them we can't leave. You know, we have general orders. Our first general order in the military is I will guard everything in the limits of my post, equip my post only when properly relieved. So we're debating and arguing. For a couple of minutes, I looked over at my truck, and something walked in front of it. You could see the driver's side neon winked. Bolted over there, it was 10 feet away, was there in a heartbeat, and nothing was running down the tank trail, nothing had run off to the woods, nothing was under the vehicles at all. I looked, and I remember I walked back over to those guys, and I sat down on the ground outside the camo net, and I was like, defeated. I felt completely and utterly just, I mean, there's no words that I have to come close to the feeling of despair, I guess. I don't know, there's hopelessness. And the next thing I know, I remember the moon at one point in time had finally come up, and then it was morning. I have no idea what happened after me sitting on the ground and the sun came up. So when the sun comes up, everybody's brave in the morning, everybody's braver in the sunlight, and I was sitting there and I went, you know what, guys? The whoppers. It was coyotes. It had to be coyotes, you guys. I guarantee you. Go check your traps. And they're like, oh yeah, we didn't think of that. So they walk over to their first trap and they're jumping up and down and they're calling, Sergeant Orton, come over here. And I'm walking over like, yeah, I'm right. I know I'm right. Whopper was completely untouched. As was the second one, as was the third one. And that's my aha story. No idea what happened that night. So after that encounter, this was August of 2002. We went to war immediately after that. So my whole life changed from there. I was overseas, so it got filed away. It really did. Other things happened. I mean, that stuck with me for quite a while. To where I remember, you know, I went to Sergeant M a couple of days after this encounter, and I said, hey, let's talk. What happened? And he looked at me and he goes, what? I said, you know, when I relieved you, I mean, that night, what happened? He looked at me and he goes, coyotes. And walked away. And I was like going, you're so full of, you know? And a lot of people in the military, it's funny because you'll have certain, you know, like me, I didn't care. I mean, I was the weird NCO. I really was. I mean, I was in Star Wars and I was into, you know, and trying to have a good time, enjoy life. And, you know, yeah, we're in the military. Let's not take ourselves too seriously. You know, it's a stressful enough job as it is. We're NCOs, we're in the infantry, we're leading soldiers into combat. You know, we got to do something. So, you know, everybody knew, you know, Sergeant Orton talks about ghosts and Bigfoot and all that other good fun stuff. So I had no problem going, hey, we have something weird, but other people, they were like, no, because they were afraid it would ruin their career, which is, you know, understandable. And me, I just didn't really care. So again, even the soldiers that I had, they came up to me about a week later and said, hey, Sergeant, we're looking on the map. And I was like, okay. And they go, we found there's an archaeological site about 2,000 meters away from where we were at. And I went, yeah, and there's another one, you know, all over the Fort Hood training areas. There's little spots on our training maps to show you where the archaeological sites. I said they're all over the area, so we can't rule that out. Because we had no idea what happened to us that night. And I never really had a chance to visit with them to talk. And I theorized the reason why, you know, Boone was crying when that rock landed is I think he saw the rock come flying past me and land, and that's what scared him. I think there's a reason why he was crying. So, which makes sense looking back on it. So just a theory that I have of what happened. But I got farther away, and it was about 2009, after I got hurt and got out of the military. I was living in Dallas, and I was watching the Bigfoot show. I love the Bigfoot shows. So I'm watching it, you know, I'm laying in bed, you know, my ex is asleep, and I'm just kind of watching, and the guy started describing rocks being thrown at him. And as soon as he said that, for whatever reason, I sat up, and it all came flooding right back into me. And I'm shaking her going, you're not gonna, this happened to me. Oh my gosh. And she's like, shut up, go back to bed. but it brought it all back in, all the memories, and started digging into, and the internet's pretty bigger than it was back in '02. So I'm now starting to trying to look it up and could not find anything. And so as time went on, I talk about it from time to time. You're sitting around a fire and everybody's telling ghost stories and spooky stuff. And they're like, well, let me tell you, about the one haunted house. Let me tell you about the aha story. And that's where the aha story came about. They're like, we want to hear the aha story. So during 2020, when things were opening back up again, I was on furlough for the company I was working at, had nothing to do. So I'd hang out at this little dive bar down the street, and every evening it turned into like a small group of us, and we ended up in the corner of the bar talking about ghost stories and cryptids and what happened and everything. And the bartender even said, Matthew, you should start a podcast. And I was like, I don't want to open up boxes. That's what I thought a podcast was. I thought it was kids opening up boxes and stuff on YouTube. Which never made sense to me. Why are you gonna watch other kids open up toys and play with them when you could, anyways, but different generation, I guess. So I held off on it. I got pushed to do it, and I started the podcast in 2024 is when I started it. And through that, I was able to meet researchers and get out there to start with my research based upon my own. Everybody starts off as an armchair researcher. And I think the best way starting off into the cryptid, research community or the paranormal community is to start off as an armchair researcher. You don't want to go into these things blind because you could trip and stumble and somebody could get hurt. So as an armchair researcher, and then start applying the research you're doing when you get out to the field to do the research. So that's how I started off. Been lucky enough to come out and start researching on my own. I've had some really, really awesome, unique encounters already. 2 Class A encounters. I've been whooped at. I've been growled at twice. I've cast a beautiful knuckle track. My daughter found an 18-inch track, which is amazing. I finally got to hear the classic from the Sierra Sounds, the sound, which at 2 o'clock in the morning, you'd think that would scare you. Instead, I smiled going, they're right down there by the river. And they're just chattering back. It was surreal just to hear them doing that. And to me, it wasn't like intimidating or scary. They were just like, you'd hear birds chirping back and forth to each other or the squirrels barking, And that's pretty much how I take it. Now, of course, we don't treat them like the squirrels or birds because it's a 600+ pound creature. They can pull your arms out of your socket if you lose. Sorry, Star Wars reference. So the Class A encounter was actually, as of this recording, 5 weeks ago. So the last one was 5 weeks ago. We were on our way to the Redding Campground. It was myself, JD from the Chum of the Spirits podcast, who's out of Kansas City. So we were window for the Arkansas Bigfoot Cartel. They put together, they asked if we'd come and investigate some areas so we could camp here, stuff. So we were excited about this. So yeah, let's go out and check it out. And we were driving up the road, and we looked down at the river, the Mulberry River, and we saw a guy, black as, like wearing black from head to clothes. Like covered in black. Big guy, you could see the space between his legs, the water was up a little bit past his knees. And our first thought was, he's fishing. Hey, we just saw a fisherman. So the next morning, Jacob was showing up that night, and Jacob's my co-researcher. He's with me all the time in the woods. I can't think of a better person to have in the woods other than Jacob, to be honest with you. So he's my babysitter. I'm the guy, there's eye shine or there's a weird noise, I'm wandering off towards it, and he has to go chasing after me to try and reel me in. But we were telling Jacob, oh yeah, yesterday we were coming up here, man, we saw a guy fishing in the river. And Good Rocks, talk about the air, it's a beautiful area. As we turned the corner where the river was at, where the guy was at, there were 3 boats that this guy would have dwarfed. And we didn't realize the height difference of our view that we were looking at until we saw the boats. There were 3 boats, and you can see the people on the boat look like this. He looked like that. And me and JD looked at each other. He was driving, and we went, no. We both were thinking the same thing, no. Right in the middle of the day, there it was in the river. Yeah, and that was the same river where we're getting all the chatter from at our campground. At the campground. It was so loud that first night at 4 in the morning, it woke the whole campground up. So the people who were there who weren't there to, go squatching, they were like, hey, we're from Oklahoma, we're hanging on out. We love this place. They came over and go, did y'all hear that? And we're like going, we sure did. all excited, and they were asking questions what we were doing, and they're like, no way. We're like, yeah, they're right here. Just dumb luck of how we were set up and just happened to fall right into our laps. Well, so through podcasting and being able to interview folks who've had encounters, one, I enjoy hearing the encounters. I enjoy being able to create a space for people because, as we all know, when you have an encounter, for a lot of folks, it's kind of a terrifying and emotional event. In the cryptid community and outside the cryptid community, it's really hard to talk to folks because they're not going to understand and they get made fun of, and nobody wants to be made fun of for their encounter. So by asking the questions and hearing what other people have gone through, comparing it to what we've been able to research, my theory right now is I believe that Sasquatch runs mainly on all fours. I think the spider crawl theory that people have reported in, I think that's more of a natural movement for them versus an upright. You take, for example, 90% of encounters that you hear about, not everybody's encounter, mind you, but about 90% always starts off with the one saying, it stood up. Now, I'm a bipedal creature. So me being down and getting up, that's kind of hard on the joint. So if it is a true, full, upright creature, it's going to have almost the same physiology as us. So it's going to be hard on the joints. Even kids, you do that for a while with kids. You put them down, they start, they're going to strain. So it's not comfortable to do that a lot. To me, that explains how the tracks disappear. I'm not saying there's nothing to woo about. I'm not saying there's, about portals or anything, but it does say, if it is walking upright and then it drops to the spider crawl, the weights can be evenly distributed out, so it's not going to leave so much track behind, and it's not going to leave the clean tracks that we're so used to, trying to find. You take your hand, you push it down, and if you're not getting the full nut, the full fingers in there, you get two of them maybe, it could almost pass off as a deer or an elk, or in some cases even a moose, depending upon which part of the country it is. Like down here, I think we have smaller ones down here than what people are going to have up in the Pacific Northwest and further north. And the further south that we go, they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Based upon, I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but he does, the predators get smaller closer towards the equator and larger away from it. So here we have black bear. Then we have, further north we have the grizzly, then we have the Kodiak, and then we have the polar. And they get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and more ornery. But I think also down here in the south, I think they're more ornery down here, and they're a little bit more grumpier down here than they are out there because one, it's hot. Let's be honest, it's hot. We have fleas and ticks. Can you imagine being furry and covered with that and fleas and ticks and just, I think so. That's why we get a little bit more of the angry side of them down here, which could also help explain what happened down in Falk. Also they were finding three-toe tracks. So we have a numerous venomous reptiles here. So if it gets bit by a copperhead or a moccasin, gangrene, fall off, it's going to take a 5-toe maybe into a 3-toe or a 4-toe, or birth defects as well. So that's some of the stuff that I've been trying to come through. And of course, I could be wrong, So I live in Arkansas. I live in the central part of the state. We cover the whole entire state of Arkansas. We work with the Arkansas Bigfoot Cartel that's located here as well. We exchange ideas, exchange equipment. Wendell, who put the cartel together, was a great idea. Not everybody's got the same equipment. Not everybody's gonna have the same. So you'll have some groups that have thermal, some groups that have a bunch of IR. So when we can get together and combine our resources and our theories, that's how we'll, and what a wonderful idea that Wendell had to do this. So I got to give props to Wendell Burroughs for that. My podcast, I'm on YouTube and Spotify, all the streaming services. I have a Facebook page. I have all the other social media pages. I'm really more active on Facebook than the other sites. People can reach me on Facebook. They can email me, drunkencryptids@gmail.com. And we do go check out private property because a lot of times I've learned when people are having encounters on their property, they don't want them to go away per se. They just want somebody to come along and go, okay, you're not crazy. And then they want ideas, okay, so like the property that we have, that we investigate north of Heber, we started this almost a year ago, and we've become really good friends with them, really close-knit. She even wrote a book about her, what's going on the property. They paid the county to come out and put a light pole on their property So they pay the county X amount a month for this big old street light. This to try and keep them away from the house. It's gotten so bad on the property, and I think this is where a lot of infrasound comes into place with them, because they're talking back and forth on both sides. They'll tell you that we'll hear it whistling over here, we'll hear another one whistle over here. And us being there, we've heard the huffs and the grunts, we've heard the chatter. She had 2 dogs attack and kill each other, kill them. Their own personal dogs who've never had a problem before. And I honestly think that was a byproduct of the infrasound being brought in, to where she's had bouts of depression, she's had bouts of despair, bouts of all these things. I think a lot of that has to do with a lot of the infrasound that's being put out. There was a village in India that the suicide rate went through the roof. And they come to find out there's an elephant on one end of the village communicating to another elephant through infrasound, and the way it affected people. In the U.S. military, we were experimenting with using infrasound as a non-lethal way to help break up riots, because it does make you feel ill, it does make you feel sick, it does make you feel completely off. It's where a lot of EMF is out there as well. When you go into paranormal stuff, it's just the same feeling. So there's something kind of tied in with that. So like with us, we're using radiation Geiger meters as well to do testing. It's where 5 weeks ago, same area we were at, their little base camp, the Geiger counter went off. And as soon as it went off, all communications shut down. And there's no reason in the middle of the night, like it would be like right where we're at now, having a Geiger meter go off. There's no reason for it at all. And be safe out there. I'll tell you that, I mean, that's one thing it is. And just closing thoughts is just what an honor and privilege to be part of a great and wonderful community. Yeah, I highly recommend everybody tune in, listen, have an encounter, talk about it. You know, I look at it as your encounter is part of your legacy. And the time that we have now, you know, before people would have to write it down in books. Now we have a great, product. We have, podcasting, just digital age that we're in, and you can share your legacy, and that can carry on to where your grandchildren can hear it. And the one thing I love is that, my great grandkids one day are going to be able to pull up the show and go, hey man, that was our grandpa,